Okay, so this is the homework, numbers 10 through 14. So let's go ahead and get started. I would strongly advise that even before you do the video, just try to pause it and do as much as you can as possible. Or, for example, I might get you started and then pause it and see if you can do the rest of it without me explaining it. Try to do as much on your own as possible, and don't worry about making mistakes because mistakes are expected. You just have to learn from it and then make the correction and then maybe do the next problem differently, okay? So number 10, all of these, since we're simplifying these exponential expressions, we're going to go ahead and always draw our little windows, okay? Draw our windows so that we can kind of see each part individually. We're going to write in equals, and since it started off as a fraction, let's go ahead and redraw that fraction bar, see what's going on. Now 12 and 16, think of this as a fraction, 12 over 16. What is the greatest common factor we can divide both of these by so that they are reduced to their simplest form? Now some of you immediately see that these are both even numbers, so you divide top and bottom by 2, but there's actually a bigger number. I would divide by 4. Now if you divide by 2, you'll just have to do it twice. But here I'm just going to go ahead and divide by 4. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Okay, and we're done with that. Now if you take a look at these happen to be the same base. Now remember what we said, mads PM, okay, mads PM. So if you are multiplying the same bases, then you add their exponents. There's an invisible 1 here. So 3 plus 1, that's 4t, so t to the 4th power, okay? And then down here we've got same bases being multiplied, so you got to add the exponents. It'll be d to that 7th power, and that's your final answer, okay? All right, so now number 11. Again, pause anytime or do as much as you can on your own. Like even now, draw the windows on your own. Pause the video and see if you draw the window apart right, okay? So I'm going to keep going, but you know that you can pause and then just keep going. Oh, and then come back. So now this one, you can't do anything with these two because they're different bases, but I see that there's a base on top and bottom. There's an exponent of 1. Now this fraction bar means we're dividing, so we're now here, okay? If you divide same bases, you need to subtract their exponent. So the 5 just gets rewritten, and then 2 subtract 1, so you keep the same base, and then 2 subtract 1 is 1, okay? None of it ends up on the bottom because this is a positive exponent. So the only other thing I'm going to do is keep the exponent of 1 invisible, and that's your final answer. Okay. Now number 12, go ahead and make your windows. Okay. Again, you can pause at any time and rewind as much as you need. So now this is just a simple, I see same bases. I see a base of t and a base of t here. So I'm going to subtract the exponents, right? Because when you divide same bases, you subtract the exponents. So I'm going to subtract. So 10 minus 8 is positive 2. And since it's not negative, this is literally the final answer because there's nothing more you can do with that. Okay, so that's it. Number 13. Do you notice it looks very similar to 12? So why don't you try this on your own, pause the video. Okay, I'm going to keep going because obviously when you unpause, I'm just going to keep going. So I'm drawing my windows, and since we're dividing, okay, we go up here, hey, when you divide same bases, you subtract the exponents. So I'm going to do 8 minus 10. So 8 minus 10 happens to be a negative 2, okay? So do you notice these look very similar, but this time the smaller exponent's on top. So when you take a small number, subtract a bigger number, you're going to end up in the negatives. You can check that with your calculator too if you do 8 minus 10. Now you don't leave this as your final answer. You got to go one more step and make sure that you make this positive. The only way it can be positive is if you change level. So it goes down, and then negative 2 now becomes a positive 2, and your final answer is 1 over t to the 2nd power, or we say t squared for short. And then last but not least, again, I would advise you to pause the video, at least draw the windows, and think back through, like, how did we do some problems that look similar to this, okay? I'm going to keep going because I know you guys can pause and unpause the video at any time. Since it's a fraction, I'll go ahead and write it. Over here, I knew that it wasn't going to be a fraction. I mean, if you did, you could have put it over 1, but that ends up being just t squared. Okay, so that's one way you can do it. If you're like, well, let me start it off as a fraction. If there's nothing left down here, just put a 1. And then when you divide by 1, that 1 disappears. Okay, now this one. So I see two numbers, okay, one on top of the other, so I'm going to treat it like a fraction. Let me do it over to the side for a second. Now, these are a little bit bigger, so you have to think about what can I divide by. Now, some of you guys will be, oh, well, you can divide by 2. Absolutely. That is a common factor for 24 and 28. But I see a bigger number than that. The greatest common factor is actually a 4. So I'm going to divide by 4. Now, if you divide by 2, you'll just have to do it again, okay? 24 divided by 4 is 6. 28 divided by 4 is 7. That's definitely not going to reduce anymore, so I'll put the 6 here and the 7 here. They reduced. Now, this a to the negative fifth, there's nothing for you to combine it with or subtract exponents. It's just a loner. But you can't let it stay negative. So we're going to go ahead and take this and put it down next to the a to the next to the 7, and then it becomes a to the positive fifth power. And there's nothing more you can do with that, so this is your final answer. This is the end of the video.